Going. You're live. Welcome to TCI, the Church of Inclusion. Hello, church family. You know Dr. Vance Whippo, a bishop in our organization. We each one of our bishops have a title that kind of tells us what department they oversee or what specific area in the spiritual aspect that they focus in. And Dr. Vance is actually a therapist, and I'm actually here in his office. As you can see, all the accolades behind. The only accolade I have is that I'm a knucklehead. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But Dr. Vance is our bishop at large at TCI. So he has a vast ministry worldwide, from Ghana and Africa to Indonesia and islands all around, and a whole slew of other places that would take us too long to even name. But the reason I'm coming to you is this is our Thursday night message at the Marysville Church. And on Thursday in the morning at 6 a.m., I'll be having my seventh heart surgery. I go in at 6 a.m. and probably going to be there for a good 6-7 hours before I can even, come back out of it to know what's going on.
So, Jonathan, I wanted to ask you a question here. Sorry for interrupting,
Yes,
but with all the surgeries you've had and everything you've done in your life, God is at work within you. I know that. But can you maybe give a message to everyone how you go about dealing with this?
It's a good question. And it's interesting. It parallels TCI, the concept of what we're building here. Because what we're building, the framework, is what we're doing right now. This is the framework, the ground level, the foundational stone is being put together by men and women like us and Cece and John and Sarti and Andrew and others that are bishops in the organization, that we are growing this outfit in a way that's not traditional. And that's, in my opinion, how I survived. As an example, I get up this morning, and you all know I got a bad heart, right? Everybody knows it. But when I woke up, here's what I said. I put my hand on my chest and I went, thank you for this amazing heart. Thank you for it beating properly. Now, what I mean by that is if you look here, you'll see it's a Garmin watch. It actually has the little beep, 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 and tracks all of my heart so that I can literally know when I'm going into AFib, and I can stop that or try to arrest it, if you will. So my heart's bad. And it says it's bad, but I will not say it's bad. I will continue to focus on the fact that it is a good heart. It is a healing heart. It is a renewed heart. And that mindset is what's kept me alive. The doctors have all tried to say, how do you live? How do you survive? And it's real simple. I tell them it's my mindset and my belief.
So do you believe that's because you love God and that God loves you?
I do. I believe it's because of, as I always tell people, I go back to being a child.
Mm-hmm.
When I was 7 years old. Before I was 7, they used to say I'd be a ministering musician, that I'd be the praise and worship leader, because I would sit there in the back of the cars. We're driving to and from churches, and most of you know my daddy was a preacher, and being a fifth generational preacher myself, I just love God because God to me is good. I don't love church in the respect of religion. I love church in the respect of what we're trying to cultivate, which is community and not religion. Not a bunch of little boxes that you guys have to fit in perfectly, because I don't fit into the box. I don't. I wear lots of jewelry and rings and big watches. And if you just barely zip down the shirt a little, of course, I might have to take a class to figure out how to zip it down. I got tattoos, and I'm not your traditional person. So you can't put me in a box. And if you're like that, that's what TCI is. We're not asking for anybody to be put in a box. All we're doing is showing you a pathway to enlightenment through God, not through a specific denomination, not through a specific magical words. People always ask me, are you Christians, or what's your belief system? I was raised a Christian, Dr. Vance.
Yeah, I was raised Christian as well.
And so I guess if you have to stick a logo on it, right, you got to stick that little stamp. I've always gone by that I was a Christian Buddhist. Now, here's why I would say that, because Buddhism is not a religion. If you actually follow the Buddha, it's a philosophy. He never claimed to be a god. He just had a system. And I loved his system because it allowed you to culturally find a way to suppress all of the pain that you were going through. And so while you were dealing with that pain, the Buddha learned a system that could help you get rid of it. So I guess I would say that I was more of a Christian Buddhist. But even now, as I say those words, I actually would prefer to just be known as a spiritualist or a spiritual person, because I'm a spiritual being, and Dr. Vance is a spiritual being, and you are a spiritual being. And so as we go through this life and this journey, this spiritual journey, we need to be nurtured. And that's what the church, the community, comes in. So at TCI, we're building house churches across the globe. And these house churches are, again, a community. And we're going to have a centralized place for the county. So as you go, as an example, I live in Snohomish County, Washington. Dr. Vance lives in Snohomish County. I live in Marysville. He lives in Arlington. And then I have a home down in Eatonville, Washington by Rainier in Pierce County. So you have each county has, let's say your county has 10 cities in it. Well, we're going to have a house church in all the cities. And then we have our services on the weeknights, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, any one of those nights, never on the weekend. And here's why. The weekend is for you to go out and play and have fun and fellowship with your family, okay? And spend quality time so you don't get into a bad situation with your marriage or with your children or with your personal issues in your life. And so TCI is breaking the mold. We're coming at things a lot differently, and it's about the mindset. And so my mindset is the reason I can overcome all these illnesses and heart attacks and strokes and tumors and cancer and all these things with a smiling attitude. It doesn't mean I don't hurt. I actually hurt. Most people that know me personally, they don't really ever even barely know the truth, because I just don't say it. I don't say how bad I really am, because I learned a lesson. If I admit it, then it becomes part of the reality. And I'm going to say some things real quick that, again, it probably rubbed some people the wrong way, but I want to take you back to the 70s. There was a guy that forgive me, I don't know his name. Carrot Top was his nickname. He was on the U.S. Olympics team, and I don't know you guys are going to laugh at me. I don't know the name of the thing, but it's where you had a pole, and they had to run, no pole to jump with, just run and then jump up and over it. So whatever that, the one where they just run, jump backwards up and over this pole and onto the mat.
All right.
I don't know what that's called, but that specific guy was the gold medal winner for the U.S. Olympics team. They called him Carrot Head or Carrot Top. They brought in a man named Dr. Dennis Whaley. And Dr. Dennis Whaley is a doctor of psychology. He worked for NASA. And what he did was the Apollo missions. He was the guy that the head shrink that got to those guys. And so they had to go with him to figure out how to overcome all these obstacles about going into space, not knowing what you're doing, where you're going, what's going to happen. How do you control yourself, your fears, and all of the anxiety that can come with that? So the U.S. Olympics said, well, if it works for the NASA guys, maybe it'll work for our guys. So they bring him in as a psychologist. First thing he does, and I don't have the numbers exact, but the world record, let's say, was 6 feet. And that's what Carrot Top, he actually did at the gold medals. That's where he got the gold medal at the Olympics just the year before. He set the world record. And again, I don't know if it was 5 feet, 6 feet, 7 feet. I'm not sure. So I'm using the 6 foot as just a sake of argument. But the 6 foot was the highest anyone had ever jumped. So that morning, Dennis goes out and he wants to meet the athletes. And he says, so what do you guys do? What's your routine? Well, we set the pole up every day. And then, we usually set it about 1.5 feet below the world record. And then he jumps and then we up it a few inches. And he goes, good. Go ahead and set it at 6 feet. And the trainer's like, no, you didn't hear me. 6 feet's the highest anyone ever jumped. And that was our medalist who did it. He goes, I understand that. I need you to set it to the 6 feet and not tell him. Just tell him it's set to his normal warm-up routine. So the guy goes and he introduces him. Hey, this is, Dennis, this is, our guy, and this is our new doctor. And he goes, great. I just wanted to meet you and watch you warm up and talk with you afterwards. He goes, cool. So he goes and runs, leisurely jumps up and over, and it was the world record, right? Then they said, could you raise it a couple inches? So they raised it a couple inches. He's thinking it's at his lower level just got raised. He runs, he jumps again. Dennis then walks up and says, hey, by the way, congratulations on the new world record. And he's like, well, no, I won that at the Olympics. He goes, no, you just set the new world record because we didn't tell you, but it was at the 6 foot and we upped it above 6 feet. So you just set another world record. If that doesn't prove to anybody that you in your mind are the most powerful thing, because God gave us this beautiful mind and it's connected with one consciousness. And that connection can allow you to tap into power. You've heard people on the news media. How did this 106-pound woman lift the car off the ground for the child to get out of it? It happens all the time in the world. We hear about it on the regular news. There's a substance. I like to call it the thinking substance. The thinking substance that permeates and penetrates everything in the universe, between our physical bodies, the wood, the computer, the walls, the vibrations from the earth. It goes everywhere. And that is the creative DNA of God. It is literally what God, my traditional Christian friends would say, God said, let there be light. And I believe that's true. And then my other spiritual friends would say, well, there was a big bang. And that's true. It was a big bang when God said, let there be. Boom, there was the big bang. So evolution is true. And so is the other paths. That when you look at it, you can actually see how, oh, wait, so I always believed God spoke into existence. Well, he did. But this guy says, well, I always believed it was a big bang. Well, it was. And they're just focusing, and I hate to say this, but it's little mindset. It's a small mindset when you can just think like, oh, it was just my God that spoke it into existence. Well, no. Mine is the Big Bang Theory. You got to expand your consciousness. There's so much more to God than trying to put them in a box. And that's what we do as humans. Mm-hmm. We shove people in boxes. We take our little Starbucks coffee cup and we say, if it fits in here, then it's okay. Mm-hmm. Well, baby, I don't fit into anything, okay? And our church doesn't. And the way we're doing things doesn't. Our website that we've just launched, and it's not even done. If you go on there, you're going to be like, what's going on? It's all under construction. But it's inclusion.church. So instead of .com, it's .church. Inclusion.church. Go to it. Dr. Vance is going to have a blog on there, and it's called The Doctor's In. And he's going to be focusing he can talk about whatever he wants, but Dr. Vance is going to be focusing on his specialty, helping you overcome your problems. That's what we're all here to do. I have problems. I ask for advice. You guys all know, I tell you, mentors are everything. If you don't have a mentor in every part of your life, I can assure you it's not going to be balanced at the highest peak performance. I was talking with Tony Robbins this week I posted, for those that are followers of me on Facebook, I posted a video shot of something Tony was saying to me. And he said, if you want to get great achievements, accomplish greatness in a department or in a particular area of your life, what does it take? He said it takes extraordinary and great effort. So how bad do you want it? When I was 450 pounds, that was a big boy. I mean, when I sat down, I was so fat that everybody sat next to me. That was, wow. How did I get rid of it? I had to take drastic change. And a couple of years ago, they said my heart was going to die. So what did I do? I said, oh, really? Well, I talked to God, and the big guy told me I get to live as long as I want. I'm trying for 125. But here's what's interesting. When you look at how I did it, I just went to the extreme. I didn't just say, oh, I'm going to start climbing mountains to push my heart in a way that it's never been pushed. I woke up and I said, I called my buddy, Brian. I said, hey, Brian, come here. I just got back from the doctors. How was it? It's all bad news. I'm going to be dead by September, September 9th. And he's like, what? Like, yeah. So what are you going to do? I was like, well, I was thinking about, I want to go climb Everest. It's on my bucket list. I want to climb Everest. He's like, have you ever climbed? And I'm like, yeah. When I was a kid, I climbed a lot. And he looks at me and he goes, maybe we can start with something a little smaller. Everest is, the largest mountain in the world. And I was like, oh, okay. How about Mount Rainier? Let's go this weekend. And he's like, I got this little trail that we can start with. Elevation, maybe 500 feet gain. But here's the interesting, that was in the early spring of last year. And on September 9th, I was supposed to have been dead. And on September 13th, we summited Mount St. Helens. And I find it interesting that was our first volcano in the Pacific Northwest that I summited, because Mount St. Helens, as you all know, in 1980 exploded. Vance, you were here living right here.
Oh, yes, I was.
I was south, Northern California. And when it exploded, it was drastic. It blew out. I mean, it was bigger than all the nuclear bombs that were bigger than Hiroshima and all the ones we've dropped. So it was destroyed, but yet out of that destruction, it's been growing and growing, and a new cone is forming, and it's going to be in the next, whatever they say, a few hundred years back to its size. And so when I looked at that, I thought it was important that was the first mountain that I summited in this whole process of pushing my body to the extreme. And the thing is, I did it. I pushed it to the extreme. But here's what's important you understand. If you don't have the right mindset for that and the belief, then you're never going to accomplish it, be it summiting a mountain, or be it going to the depths of the ocean, or becoming a star athlete at a high production aspect. To be an athlete, do you know that athletes have what they call mentors? They literally have psychologists like Dr. Vance. So if you're right now saying, well, I'm in business. Well, good. Do you have a psychologist in your business? Well, I don't need that. Really? Because let me tell you what, Tony Robbins has it. That's one thing I was impressed when I worked with Tony years ago, 2 decades ago. The guy had a mentor for every single department. I have a mentor for my marriage counsel, literally for my marriage counseling, for me and my wife. I have a mentor for that. I have a mentor in business. Now, let me rephrase it. I have multiple mentors in business specializing in certain areas. I've got a leadership mentor, Dr. John Maxwell. Most of you know Dr. John Maxwell. That was one of my first mentors in business and in ministry when it came to leadership. So when I got a question about leadership, I don't have to guess. I don't. I just pick up the phone and say, John, this is the situation. What's your advice? And he'll usually give me a story or something. And if I gotta try to figure out how to overcome something up here between these 2 ears, I'm calling this guy, the greatest shrink I've ever known. And he's not a head shrink where he shrinks your head. Well, maybe. Okay. I'd like it. My hats would fit better if I had a smaller head. But you've got to tap into that. And that's what TCI is building. At the end of the day, folks, that's what we're building here. We're building a spiritual network that is going to take each city, but the county as a whole, and really transform how we do church, because it's not about traditional going to church on Sunday morning, putting a few bucks in an offering plate, going home. Wow. What'd you get out of that? I'm sorry. You didn't get much. Most preachers, like this guy and this guy, with traditional speaking, you're looking at like a 45-minute message, unless you come from like the Episcopal side, and then you're down to about 30-ish. But your modern day evangelicals are running an hour-long sermon. Sure. And the science is this. You can't remember diddly squat after about 25 minutes.
I was going to say 10. Then you got to put a joke in there. Keep their attention.
Unless it's his joke. It's going to be another 30 minutes. I'm kidding. But it's important when you think about that. 25 minutes. So I actually, when we were founding this ministry, which is now going on 1997, I don't know what that'd be, 23 plus 2, 25, going on 26 years. 26 years ago, one of the key elements in what we wanted to do was to get back to the basics.
Mhm.
In my business, everyone always told me, how'd you make the millions? I kept it simple. Make a friend. If you make a friend, everybody will buy from you if they're your friend.
Mhm.
So make a friend. John Maxwell used to say, touch the heart first before you ask for the hand.
It's true.
And if you can touch the heart, well, it's no biggie if I ask for the hand. Vance will give me his hand, and vice versa, because we've touched each other's hearts. And so when you look at some of those key elements there, one of the things we wanted to do was go back to the basics. So I went back to the Bible because I was raised reading the Bible, raised as a Christian. And so I just reread everything from Genesis to Revelations, from the very beginning to the end, the Alpha and the Omega. And I saw it in a whole nother way that it was like the movie The Matrix. You know that scene where Neo, he's in the hallway and the agent at the other end, he sees him and they start shooting and Neo just waves his hand and all the bullets just stop. And then he goes, and he flexes his muscles and the whole room like expands and shrinks, but it's all in numbers because he finally saw it. And if you guys have seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, you should go watch it because your spiritual journey is a lot like the Matrix. When you can finally tap into that moment, when you can see the Matrix, when you can see what the power of positive thinking can do, when you can tap into that thinking substance that I talked about earlier, that permeates and penetrates every aspect of our world and existence and the universe at all, which is God, when you can tap into that, you can become anything you want. You want to be a billionaire? You can do it. You want to create the greatest practice in the world? You can do it. If you want to have a successful marriage, you can do it. And if you want to be complex like me, baby, you can do it. You can do anything you want if you can tap into that. And so I looked at Jesus' sermons because I was reading the Bible. And I was like, wait a second, his longest sermon, I timed it. I read the clock, time, read the words, clock. Wait, he never spoke more than 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Never more than 15 minutes. So who are you and me to think that we're better than him? And that was the first part that really hit me. And then I noticed, wait a second, he didn't build the church. Wait, you didn't build a church? Of course you got to build a church. That's where everyone has to come to, and you can get them all in there, and then they all tithe to you, and they give you your money and all these things. He did it backwards. They had a synagogue back there. He could have used the synagogue. He could have built his own synagogue or done something like that. It's a fundraising campaign for the new synagogue of Jesus Christ. Why didn't he do that? Because he did not want to build a religious institution, which is unfortunately what has happened. When I was made a bishop, the man who made me a bishop is fourth from the Pope. It's a long story, but my roots go back to the actual first Pope, as they refer to it, which was, of course, St. Peter. And all of our ministers follow that lineage. That lineage is filled with religious garbage. And that's not what we are about at TCI. We're about spiritual health. Life and growth in the spirit was the first name that this church carried in 1997. That's what our name was in 1997. It was life and growth in the spirit, because it's not about a religious structure. It's not about saying a certain thing with the cross, praying in a certain way, wearing a certain cloth on our head. It's not about any of that. Mm-hmm. I don't care what denomination you come from, be it a Christian or a Muslim or a Hindu. It really boils down to one simple thing with all faiths on earth: a relationship. That's it. A relationship with God. Nothing else matters. Not how much you tithed on Sunday or how much you didn't tithe on Sunday, or how many services you went to this year or how many you didn't go to. Or I carry a rosary and I carry the Star of David. It doesn't matter. We're all God's children. Black, white, gay, straight, fat, skinny, good looking. I knew I'd get a laugh out of him. Dr. Vance, do you have anything to add to the message today?
Yeah. Just no, TCI is not about for, the individual who wants to be elite. This is about the common person, the person who wants